Yeah, go ahead.
Done. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you tonight to our event, The Art of Slow Eating. First, we apologize. We had some technical difficulties. Welcome to the world of virtual events. But we are glad you're here, and we are still going to have a fantastic evening. So I want to first talk a little bit about the Slow Food mission. We're absolutely thrilled that we have Peter Hoffman and Cathy Erway here tonight. They are both part of the Slow Food family. And for those of you who don't know, the mission of Slow Food is really good, clean, fair food for all. And there are many layers to that mission. We support it in a lot of different ways. And tonight, what we wanted to do was really just celebrate food and, marvel at ingredients. Peter's new memoir that we're celebrating tonight is structured around 14 ingredients. And food has this power to connect. And we're just happy to be here connecting over food with all of you. So also I wanted to thank all of you who were able to donate through the donor link. And just so you know where that money goes, we wanted to make the event accessible to everyone and not charge a ticket, but 100% of those donations go to a community garden that we support called Ujima. It is in East New York, Brooklyn. And they're a community garden, an education center. They have great programming. And during the pandemic, they also doubled as a food distribution center for New Yorkers in need. So your donations really go a long way to help them continue the very important work that they're doing. So thank you for that. And we will have that link available throughout the evening and also after this as well. So moving on to the book, we're very appreciative of our partnership with McNally Jackson Bookstores. We're happy that we were able to provide a book signing opportunity even in this virtual space. So we did provide a link in the invitation, and we will also make that available in chat. And the opportunity there is to have the book personally signed by Peter, not just signed, but actually made out to you, or it makes a great gift. So if you just go through that link, you can place it in your cart. You'll see a field where you can enter how you'd like it made out, and then either have it delivered to you, or you can arrange for local pickup at your convenience. So we're excited about that. One other thing is that link may not stay live for very much longer, maybe only a few more days, because Peter's book does go on sale to the public tomorrow. So if you're interested in a personally signed book, go ahead and do that sooner rather than later. So the way the evening will run, and again, thank you for being here tonight, and we do apologize for the few minutes delay, but we want to let Peter and Cathy have this very free-flowing discussion, so we'll hold off on questions during their conversation, but we will leave time for Q&A at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, just simply type it in chat, and we will get to as many questions as possible. Feel free to ask a question of either Peter or Cathy. And again, we welcome and encourage them. So now moving on to officially introduce our speakers. We have Chef Peter Hoffman. Many of you know him as the owner and chef of the very beloved Savoy restaurant in New York City, also Back 40 and Back 40 West. He was a locavore before that was even a thing. And he has mentored a number of cooks who have gone on to be chefs in their own right. Because of all of that, he is the proud recipient of a Slow Food NYC Snailblazer Award. And he's published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, a lot of other places, but What's Good, a memoir in 14 ingredients is his first book.
Yeah.
So leading our conversation tonight is Cathy Erway, also part of the Slow Food family, and a notable home cook, actually an award-winning home cook. She won a James Beard Award in 2019 for home cooking, and she has written a number of cookbooks, one on Taiwanese cooking, one on sheet pan chicken recipes, and she's written her own memoir, I'm gonna get the name right here, called The Art of Eating In. So that'll be an interesting contrast between Peter as the restaurant chef and Cathy as the home cook. Cathy also hosts a podcast called Self-Evident, which explores Asian and American stories. And she's hosted numerous podcasts in the past that have also won awards. I could go on and on with their very impressive bios, but we want to hear from them. So thank you again for being here. Thank you, Cathy and Peter, and I will now turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And all the really this is all about Peter tonight. I just want to say off the bat, Peter, your book, I know it's coming out tomorrow, so many people haven't checked it out yet, but I have to say that your book was such a warm and just a wonderful companion over the last week on beach days and sleepy nights and also the weekend after collecting an armload of ingredients from the Green Market at Grand Army Plaza where I go, and mulling over what to cook with them, which is like the best part of any week, if you ask me. It's called What's Good, a memoir in 14 ingredients. And it very skillfully blends chapters that really meditate on the natural wonder of ingredients, as well as chapters that, and these are chapters that, any home cook or restaurant chef can just, of all levels can really savor. I found myself afterward with such a deeper appreciation for leeks, which is, something I already thought I kind of appreciate a lot. But, this book is so well written. And I think that the chapters, they also chronically trace your experience and your journey as a cook, as a restaurant owner, and also as a member and a leader of a vast and energetic food community that's focused on championing and preserving the farmers, the growers, the fishers, and the diversity of the ingredients and the sustainability of the land. I was actually fortunate enough to have met you through that community, actually at various different cook-offs and other fundraisers.
At Jimmy's.
Often held at Jimmy's number 43. I actually took a picture of you and your daughter Liv at one such benefit for the Green Market. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. And over the years, I would often spot you on your just iconic bike that was actually like a cargo bed. I guess it's a tricycle with a cargo bed in the back that you would pick up. It's a
bicycle.
A bicycle. Okay, sorry.
It is a bicycle, but it does have that cargo bay in it.
With a cargo bed for all the all the Green Market ingredients. And one time I actually even spotted you in front of the Bowery, some restaurant supply place, getting some stuff that you were piling on there. I was like in a cab or something. I was like, hey. So, between doing that, biking around town, working in the kitchen, you must be one of the most fit chefs out there. So congrats on that. I also learned recently that you've been a devout yogi for the last 20 some years or more. So that probably also helps as well. So well done.
Helps the flexibility.
Absolutely. But, I'm sure a lot of people are here because you famously stepped away from the restaurant world that you had been a pioneer in for almost and more than 26 years when you closed Savoy back in 2016. And the report said at the time that you were going to take some time to write a book. So you've taken some time and you've written a lot, more than 300 pages of it. Yeah. And I'm so excited you're going to share with others. I have to say, it's definitely not a chef memoir in that like showy sort of tell-all kind of shock value way.
Right.
It's, with any chapters that does focus on your personal journey, I feel like it's in the service of a greater message about food. And it also just straddles this cool space where it's almost like a naturalist journal and, but with really good writing, like in the style of like Annie Dillard, who I noticed was one of your favorite writers in here. And it's also peppered with insights and, for folks to think about food a little bit more thoughtfully and politically, sort of in the vein of Wendell Berry or some other food activist. And it's all rooted in so much real lived experience in the gritty world of running a restaurant in New York City, in Soho specifically. So it's such a unique book that I think would appeal to a lot of people on many levels. So congratulations.
Well, thank you, Cathy. Thank you.
Yeah, and so to start off, I thought it would be great for everyone to get a little taste of what we're talking about if you would like to choose an excerpt to read from?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
Um, as you said, the book is telling my life, and there are these 14 ingredients. The ingredients are um, organized starting at the very beginning of the, the growing season, or starting with the non-growing season in the heart of winter, and then moving through early spring into summer, fall, and sort of the end of the growing season. So those are the 14 ingredients. And so you kind of get birth to death of that annual cycle, um, over the course then of my interwoven over the course of my life up to this point is 65 years, not nowhere near death, I hope. Um, but So the chapter that I'm going to read a little bit from is my chapter about apples and pears. It starts by talking about why I don't eat any of the summer apples, because I'm still trying to live the summer life. And then I go into and eating peaches, and then I talk about pears and how I feel about pears. Um, but I'm going to jump in to a very urban moment later in the season when I am finally starting to eat apples. I come up out of the 86th Street Q station, the jewel in the crown of New York City's 4-decade-long Second Avenue subway project. It's grand, grander than it needs to be. Maybe it was planned for the grandeur of an age yet to arrive, when the station will be a hub for a bustle that has so far eluded the neighborhood. It's been a backwater all these years due to its distance from the Lexington Avenue subway, regardless of its Upper East Side zip code. Along the station's expansive walkway of white subway tile, there are huge mosaic portraits by the artist Chuck Close, interspersed every 100 feet or so. They represent Close's New York arts community. His standbys, Philip Glass, Lou Reed, Alex Katz, as well as less familiar subjects, Kara Walker, Sienna Shields, and John Wan. Each portrait is done in a different mosaic technique, reflecting Close's own evolving grid imagery. The work defines New York City in this early 21st century moment, a mosaic of mosaics, with musicians, photographers, and artists who together comprise our diverse, vital landscape. I quickly exit out of the station's southern end because I'm on a mission to visit a green market I've never been to, and specifically to visit Ron Samascot, a farmer I know but rarely see. Ron, together with his brother Gary, 7 other family members, 12 full-time year-round employees, 25 seasonal workers here on H-2A visas from Mexico, and 6 mostly Nepalese people running the markets in the city. He produces the most diverse and best cared for apples I know of on a 1,000-acre 4th-generation farm in Kinderhook, New York. The neighborhood is a whisper of the one that flourished here 50 years ago. In those days, you could hear Hungarian spoken on the street, see old ladies with kerchiefs tied around their heads and colorful flowers embroidered on their dresses, and eat chicken paprikash at countless spots up and down the avenue. My father would take us to Mrs. Herbst's for strudel, and then stop by Paprika Weiss to pick up some spices and peppers before heading home to the homogeneity of suburban New Jersey. Little of that remains, but the church still stands, and not far away is the Budapest Cafe, where you can still get a solid bowl of goulash and a passable cherry strudel. On this brilliant Saturday morning in December, Samascot has 35 different varieties on offer. I've never counted before. I just knew they lay out a nice spread. But 35? Who needs 35 different kinds of anything? We certainly don't need 35 kinds of breakfast cereal, even if the center aisles of supermarkets are filled with them. But this feels different. Instead of being overwhelming or redundant, it's invigorating. There are individual personalities here. Among the russeted types, there are some with green underwashes, others almost orange. Some sport a final brushstroke of red, a splash of deep maroon. I snag a few Newtown pippins with pink freckles. They must have enjoyed a few chilly nights combined with good daytime sun just prior to being picked. Plenty of red varieties have scabs of russeting on their shoulders, stretch marks of beauty, battle scars from an early cold snap. Varying girths and shapes read as delightful nonconformity, not as ragtag discards that under other circumstances would fail to make the cut for USDA commercial grade A. A few days after I stopped at Ron's stand, I went to my local Whole Foods store and found about a dozen apple varieties available, which numerically might seem like a wide selection. They were mostly from Washington State, each mountainous a pile, nearly perfect in its consistent coloration. This one canary gold, that one dappled in orange red, the next a perky green taken right off a Beatles record label. The voluminous displays all promise a steady pipeline of supply. There's more where that came from, not just in the back, but on their way here, tomorrow, next week, next month. Sizing is consistently uniform and orderly. The fruit can be laid up in cardboard boxes for maximal space use, each apple nested in its own egg carton-like depression, isolated from its neighbors. No one apple can spoil the entire bunch. Washington state growers are able to deliver consistency and predictability because the high desert of the Eastern Cascades offer cool nights, steady sunlight, and a federally engineered irrigation system, which together are about as close to corporate control of weather variability as a farmer will ever get. Corporations need tippy, as in typical. People don't. Um, Tippy doesn't have a home at Samascot. There are no bin ends selling off items at reduced prices, and they don't own a PLU sticker, so supermarket sales aren't even a possibility. I frequently hear shoppers ask the Samascot workers which apple is best for pie making. Pie master in residence, my wife Susan, always insists that I bring her back a mix of apples. She wants Max because they easily melt into sauce and act as mortar for others, the structural wine saps and honey crisps. A few Newtown pippins for acidity and golden russets for complexity and color contrast. No one apple can hit the highs we want in pie, in a bottle of cider, or in the world. It's always about the blend. The urban blend is alchemy, part science and part magic. It allows a world of creativity, dissent, variety, and surprise to thrive. Like Close's mosaics of sparkling and flat tesserae, the pattern's indistinguishable close up, but standing back, the image comes into focus, faces gazing out, scrutable and grounded in the city. I'm a wine sap, and you're a northern spy, and she is a seek no further, and that guy over there is a blue pear Maine. I need to live near all these varieties with a few Jonathans and opalescents too, in order to be happy. That's why I'm still here in the city, climbing the subway stairs, curious to discover what surprises might abound on its tiled walls in the city's sleepy neighborhoods and in wooden crates piled high with Samascot apples. Yeah.
Oh man, we are so lucky here to have such great apples.
Yeah,
I am
we are.
actually very spoiled because my CSA is starting next week, and Smatscott is our fruit farm.
Oh, wow, you
Very,
are special.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, but when you go to the green market, even now you see apples, and everyone's like, "Oh, apples still," but it's like they're still so good.
they are.
Um, there's so much more to that chapter too that you go on about how apples are so one of a kind and so unique. There's just so many fascinating assets or aspects to every ingredient that you talk about in this book. um, I want to shift a little bit to another chapter though, because I think
Sure.
that you know one of my favorite chapters that is kind of more of the memoir style. I think it really helps folks understand your perspective and your legacy as a chef in America. And that's the chapter called Community.
Uh-huh.
It's about you finding community. It's a lot of things going on in that chapter. You start out by describing how you developed a certain viewpoint as a chef after some unsatisfying stints in restaurants, went to what sounds like a wonderfully idyllic educational program in France, taught by a woman named Madeleine Kaman.
Cayman.
Kamen,
Hmm.
where you learned about things like concepts like terroir. And it sounds like you came back a completely different chef. One who eschewed the tropes of the time of haute cuisine in New York City, which you write to the point that the soul, the guts had disappeared from the plate. So cooking what was on hand, in season and close to the land, was what I wanted, regardless of whether it was the food of provincial Europe or of the American countryside. So then you write about how after, getting into this, you do enjoy the like after shift decompression beer with colleagues, but you didn't overindulge, and you didn't want to, harm, your health or affect your professional career. So you didn't want to spend long nights and, you know, of excess and abuse of drinking and all kinds of stuff that is so rampant in the industry. Um, and you actually wrote that, because you didn't choose to take in some of this late night cook culture, it may have hurt you actually professionally too, because it meant you were sacrificing some acceptance amongst colleagues. And at the time, the New York chefs, you write, who were gaining notoriety, were living large, and they were the kind of partying types. So therefore, in lieu of that, you started organizing chef potlucks and picnics, and kind of planting the seeds of this alt chef community that you described. And you later go on to join the Chefs Collaborative, which is a mission-based community of chefs who lead workshops and other educational events to look at sustainability concerns and share this knowledge in pursuit of a better way to make food together. But you write that came a bit later. So I'm curious what you think about that culture of the kind of living large. You write the New York chefs gaining notoriety at the time were the living large partiers relishing their misfit status. A lot has been talked about of this culture and whether or not it needs to change. And of course, you write about a very interesting relationship you've had throughout your professional career, which I'm not sure if everyone knows, but you met this guy during a summer high school creative writing workshop,
right?
Named Tony, who you then met up with many years later as Anthony Bourdain.
Right.
And you guys diverged. You guys were friends, but really, really diverged philosophically throughout your careers as a chef, each of you.
And then sort of came back in a certain way. But
fascinating.
So I guess one thing, we're in a place, a lot of us are, whether we're concerned about the climate and the globe, or we're concerned about personal health. And for a very long time, good food was associated, and the gourmand, right, in the French term, was associated with excess on a certain level, with going over and that the best meal was one that went over the top. And the fat chef, right, was an image for a long time, and that's
the tattoos and all, right?
Well, I'm talking about like back in the French world before I'm not talking about the tattoo guys. I'm talking about the fat French chef, or the Italian guy with the big belly, and that meant that he was living large and eating well and enjoying life. And so here we are. A lot of us are concerned today. We want to eat the best ingredients, but we don't want to go overboard. That's not good for our bodies and not good for the planet. So that culture, what it was like to be a cook and in the culinary world in a lot of those years where the attention, the restaurants that were getting that attention were restaurants that were about that kind of excess. And so that if you came in and we were going to show you a good time, we showed you a good time by um, going all out, sending lots of courses and drinking the best wines, and then moving on to Armagnac. And so that those behaviors then that were special occasions for diners all of a sudden became something that we thought that we could have round the clock, and so that when the shift was over, we wanted to continue the party that our businesses were engaged in making to begin with for other people. So we wanted to be part of the party. And I was never really very comfortable with that. And as I said in this chapter, I mean, I treated many ways, I wanted to treat myself like an athlete, that I was in training to be a skilled cook. And so I stood apart. And as you said earlier, Cathy, standing apart also had social / professional ramifications, and that certain guys, it was mostly guys at that point, but certain people, um, uh, whatever, I didn't build deeper relationships with them. I didn't get invited to certain events, and so I felt on the periphery in certain ways, and so I then started to build my own community. And what really changed, I mean, I did those potlucks and Rosenzweig and Tracy Desjardins when she was in the city, and Alfred Portale, and there were other people who attended them. But what really changed for me was when I found Chefs Collaborative, and that was a nationwide group of chefs, and all those people were thinking about the same kinds of issues, dedicated to both finding sources and discovering the story of how our food in this country was being raised, whether it was a good story, as in a grower that we all wanted to do business with, or the, 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 the less great stories of our food system, and what we need to be aware of and push against, and make decisions about whether we were even going to participate in those parts of the food system. So that was and continues to be an important community of people for me, who are all driving their careers around a set of deep, long range values that go way beyond just the fashion of the moment of getting butts in the seat.
Yep. I love how you mention this clash, this divide among chefs, that, between, at the same time that you and this wonderful community were exploring ingredients and how to source them sustainably. And, you mentioned that Tony, for instance, was one of several chefs and influential ones, I think, that thought that, it's, whether an ingredient came from the Cisco truck or wherever, it would still taste good if you just add a lot of butter and sear it hard. And, it's all about technique, right? So that's another prevailing thought
Right.
at the time. Right. In fact, you write that Tony was satisfied to buy whatever protein was cheap, sear it in a hot pan, baste it with a lot of butter, and then serve it up, presuming that the customers didn't care and would never know the difference. He was smugly dismissive. Everything and everybody was expendable. And that wasn't just him, though. It was several folks, many influential folks at the time. But he was actually particularly abrasive, you write, towards the mission that you guys were on with Chefs Collective. And he would criticize the movement for being too nanny-like or something didactic, perhaps. Now, certainly, this is not the greatest thing that Bourdain is remembered for or respected for. He's done a lot in his career, but since ingredient sourcing, sustainability, farm to table eating is what you are most strongly associated with, and it's the main theme of this book. And I'd love to get your thoughts on how you think that his particular disdain towards these ideas has had any, if any, lasting effect on the culinary landscape today.
No, I don't. I, not in. I don't think so. I mean, it just retarded the growth of the speed of change that needs to happen.
Hmm.
Um, he, number one, he came around to begin to talk about the fact that how a lot of industrial food was raised was terrible for the planet and for the people who were raising it and for the people who were putting it in their bodies. That was not a message that he started out with. He made fun of us,
Hmm.
as you said, and had called us basically nanny culture. He was very, you know, add a little misogyny in terms of looking at his comments about Alice Waters. Um, and but as a movement, he was like, we don't care about those values. We're pirates, and so and I think it I think that the disservice that he did the business for a long time was is that he romanticized that excess, and there are a lot of people who are still hurting personally from not having control over those excesses. Whatever substances that they're struggling with, and Tony struggled with substance abuse as well. And so, I mean, and he was upfront about it at a certain point, and but for a while he gave a lot of license, and I don't think that was helpful to the industry. But in time, and what was interesting was is that we came together in our mission, in our values, not necessarily as friends again, but we came together by around the nose to tail eating, and he came at it from in a certain way. This is like he liked to be outrageous and to uh, break taboos, and so the taboo of eating every part of the animal was something that he relished putting in front of everybody's face, that he did it without any fear. And I came to nose to tail eating from a completely different place, but it was about wanting to buy from local producers of meat and then buying the whole animal and then needing to use the whole animal and learn how to do that, how to make the money back by selling tongue and tails and making pate with pork liver and things like that. So we had this convergence around Fergus Henderson and his nose to tail cooking book and cookbook and dinners that I was doing. Fergus actually was a guest chef at the restaurant on 2 occasions. Tony didn't come, but we all knew that we had sort of arrived in the same place. And so from there, he then really took on a message of espousing not just environmental justice, and but he also started to really show a lot more respect for the cultures of the world and peoples of from different places and under different kinds of stresses and circumstances. So I feel like he came around to having a lot of respect for people in the planet that he didn't always show earlier on.
Got it. It's so interesting, and all respect to Tony Bourdain, who can't be here to share his thoughts on this with you. But I think it's really interesting that you met at a creative writing workshop, and I'm curious because this is your first book. Congratulations. So he's not here to see it. What did you think of his writing? How did you write something really interesting about his writing when you were teenagers? That it was like really strange and weird, and it was like an acid dream, basically. Let me.
Well, he was, I mean, so it was summer school. We both decided to um, take coursework over the summer so that we could graduate from high school early because we both wanted to get out of the suburbs. And half the class was um, text analysis. We were reading Shakespeare and Eugene O'Neill and Tennessee Williams, and then the other half of the class was doing creative expository writing, prose writing, and um, and he was already he was who he was. I was who I was. He
But
he
they
was
were
already kind of outrageous.
gonzo surrealist dreams retrieved from the inside of his head in fast brushstrokes full of body irreverence.
Right. Which I found exciting and fun. And I was a much more analytical, I think I said something there about I was doing kind of like my writing was as if I was
And
doing a
yeah,
botanical drawing of a plant,
right.
something like
But
that.
even your description of his writing is very fun too, I have to add.
So, yeah, I mean, he was or is, his voice is still there. He's a really good writer. Um, and get the you get the energy, you get the life from what he's talking about. Um, it's a fast, it's very fast moving words. I wouldn't say that my writing is ponderous, but I carefully laying out the details.
Right. Now, you write in the very, very beginning prologue of this book when you describe the very momentous, decision to close Savoy and turning in your keys for the last time of this place that you had gone to every day for 26 years or more. That you had sort of, the restaurant world had changed a little bit. And you write, I love this metaphor that, like someone who doesn't notice the grays and the hair accumulating over the years, you hadn't noticed that the world around it had changed a little bit
Hmm.
over time. It's sort
Right.
of gentrified
Yeah.
more than,
More than just gentrification, it had turned into a shopping district.
okay.
And when we were there, it was a back eddy of Soho. Soho was still all about art galleries.
Mhm.
Um, Saturday was a big lunch day for us because everybody was checking out the galleries and having lunch and then looking and then having lunch. Um, so it was a very different neighborhood. It had already started to gentrify from the industrial neighborhood that it had been prior. But then in time, the galleries, the price of rent went up, and larger stores were there, and national chains were there, and the galleries moved to Chelsea or they moved to the Lower East Side, um, and we were left with um, uh, Emporio Armani, and Victoria's Secret, and um, De Segal, and the people who were buying that stuff would come in with huge bags and eat burgers, and they weren't really interested in the exploration that we were involved in as culinary explorers. That we were trying to share something on the menu about our process, not just put out a menu that people wanted to eat, but that was a outcome of the work that we were just trying to do as explorers, and that wasn't working anymore. So,
Right. And it became a fast casual restaurant
yep,
concept.
yep,
I think they're called concepts. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I like how you kind of draw the comparison to the restaurant that was right before yours, which was a lunch counter um, for
Yeah, it was a luncheonette.
Yeah, workers. I
Uh,
think.
well, it was, so it started out started out probably in the 50s and 60s. It was a Greek diner, and then the Greek diners, the guy who owned it, or the woman who owned it, sold it to some Puerto Rican dishwashers of hers who turned it into a rice and beans joint. At that point, it became known as the Rodriguez. And then they had a Korean dishwasher who they taught to make rice and beans, and so he ran it as a Spanish rice and beans place, even though that wasn't his culture. And at that time, then, and it was very much sort of like there was a steam table there, and you could dish out. You didn't move down a cafeteria line, but the food was done. And very little was short order, um, grilling a grilled cheese sandwich maybe. But and so I opened the book by realizing that I was bookended, that the years of Savoy and Back 40 West were, and that was 26 years, were bookended by two concepts that were there to feed the workers of the neighborhood. The first one, the Rodriguez was selling to the truck drivers and there were a lot of sweatshops in those buildings where Dean and DeLuca was and the other Broadway buildings. And so they were moving fabric and some of them were seamstresses or seamsters and truckers. That's what was there for the Rodriguez. And then once we left, um, the folks who came in, dig in, were basically doing cafeteria style for the people who were working in the offices of what had now become kind of venture capital offices, design, internet companies, things like that. And so the idea of dining had had its moment in terms of what was happening in that on that corner in that spot, come and gone.
Now, I do want to save time for questions from the audience, but I know that one question they might be asking or thinking about asking, I want to get to first, which is, what's next for Peter Hoffman? Are you going to have a new restaurant or a new book? What do you think?
No, I think I'm done with restaurants for the moment, Cathy. It's a very difficult environment at the moment, and
you would know.
Yeah. I had a great time working on this book. It wasn't always easy for me. I struggled with the procrastination to stay at it, but when I got into it, and the ingredient chapters are really kind of the wonderful exploration for me in the way that I was exploring cuisine in the kitchen. I loved that, and I want to do more of that. And so I have a list of ingredients that I want to think about and study a little bit more. And I'm not sure how I'll weave that into a book proposal or a book project, but I'm going to keep writing.
I love it. I even love the ingredients that you didn't love so much, like the burger that killed your restaurant, which we can get into as well. But
at some point, but it's an interesting story, right? You start out with one idea, and all of a sudden, you think you're in charge, but you're not, and it takes over. And in this case, the burger kind of took over the restaurant, and then I was like, how did I get here? This is not what I want to be doing. So that's what's in those burger chapters. There's two of them.
I love it. I love that, you talk about the good, bad, the ugly. It's not just this sort of like, I love the like kind of waxing poetic about all these ingredients, but you just lay out the gauntlet of what you like and what you don't like and why. And it's so fascinating.
Great.
Love to hear it. So I think we can open up to questions now, and I can jump in if anyone is a little shy so far, but I would love to hear what people are. Okay.
Go ahead and put some questions in chat or in Q&A. And what I'd like to do while people are thinking of their questions, we do have a few come in. But Peter, you've also gotten a number of love notes in the chat.
I know, I saw a few of them.
Yes,
thank you,
and I want to make sure you saw them, but also for the sake of the recording, which doesn't capture the chat, I'm just going to read a few of those so we have memorialized. We have congratulations and love from Hillary and Richie in Philly. Yep. We have Rebecca, who is looking forward to picking up your signed copy at the Nolita store. And then we have a very nice note here from Sarah in Boulder. She's having a Back 40 cocktail and toasting you. And I'm just going to read this verbatim. Thank you, Peter, for having the courage to stand on your own and build a community rooted in deep values. Change menus, change lives. You inspired, influenced, and changed my life.
Yeah, that's nice.
So from what I've heard, and I know the discussions we've had, and you've had conversations now with Cathy even before this, but I think that really embodies like who you are, your contributions to the culinary world. And it's not just, it's about ingredients, it's about a movement of food, and it's really about just touching people. I think that's a very nice summary of what you've been able to do. So we certainly were going to take questions as well, but I just want to extend our Slow Food congratulations to you as well. This is really an honor for you to be here, and we're really happy for you about your book. So
thanks.
Yes. So yeah, Kathy, go dive
I have
in.
a question. I want the selfish purposes. What is the back 40 cocktail?
Oh, well, it's basically a whiskey sour. The recipe is on got posted on some of the Instagram of Slow Food NYC, Kathy, so you can pick it up there. But it's a bourbon whiskey sour made with maple syrup or part maple syrup as the simple syrup, and then orange bitters. The
Ah,
recipe's in the book as well at the end of the maple syrup chapter.
that's one thing I really actually love about this book. You have recipes at the end of every chapter that, they're not all very complicated. For instance, they're not like your style of cooking. They're very approachable. I love the leek and potato one. What is that called? It has a funny name.
Johnson's Temptation.
Jonathan's Temptation.
Yeah.
You just basically stick it in the oven for a long time. Sounds
Yeah,
very.
it's a potato gratin that's made with anchovies and leeks and some cream or half and half, and it'll get you through uh, some cold winter nights.
Leek potato, anchovies, garlic,
Half and
black
half.
pepper, and half. That's like the only ingredients on here. And
Yeah.
then it's slow cooking. It's very simple. You say just, look at how the cream is reducing. I love these instructions. If it has cooked away, leaving too many exposed potatoes, turn down the temperature a little bit and perhaps add a splash more of half and half to slow down the cooking. The dish is done when a knife passes easily through the potatoes and there are golden brown patches on top. It's very organic and very homey, and
Anybody can do it.
yeah, I love it. So I have a question. How did you choose? Oh, do we want to ask somebody these questions?
Well, some people
Oh, okay.
were asking or missing the calzottada.
Ah,
I'll just tell you that there's a chapter about the calzottada in the book. And so it's not a recreation of that event, but because it's such a magical and wonderful thing. But the story of the calzots and the calzottada and how that all evolved is there in the book, as well as my recipe for romesco sauce, which is what you dip the grilled leeks. Calzots are wintered over leeks, and you dip them into romesco sauce. So that's there in the book.
oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah.
One kind of broad question is, how did you choose these 14 ingredients? Did you just kind of acquire them as ideas came to you? You had to choose between children to
Yeah.
write this book.
Um, so I want to read what Cassandra has to say about how many years it took me to put the burger on the menu. So, but the ingredients, well, you know, part of it is the fact that some of it was just evolved that I was going to the farmers market all the time and talking to farmers about what they were growing and deepening my understanding about that. And I realized that they were complex stories that um, told even bigger stories, right? So the chapter about the TriStar day neutral strawberry is not just about the fact that Rick Bishop grows a cool strawberry, but it's like
Very fun.
what's going on about the life of plants and their relationship to the sun, and when do they flower and when do they reproduce and when do they uh, what's their whole life cycle. And so that I knew that there were ones that were fascinating to me that I wanted to study more deeply. um, and then I also sat down. I mean, there are ingredients that got left out because whatever, that's for book two. But I said, what if I were to write about a whole year in the growing season in New York? What does that look like? What are the ingredients that need to be here to tell that story? And that's why it starts with potatoes and leeks and moves into maple syrup and then sort of ramps and other leafy greens before any fruiting bodies or are there. And then someone had a question about garlic scapes. And so there's a garlic chapter because the scapes are so kind of interesting. And I tell the story of the scapes. And then we move into tomatoes and peaches and um,
Apples.
apples, of course, and kale and radicchio sort of late in the season. And then there's some proteins mixed in there as well. The um, shrimp and skate get as two fishes, and the pork kind of wiggles its way in there, but isn't really an ingredient chapter. So yeah, so but as I said, I sat down and I said, I need to, what describes a whole year in the market? And so I rounded out that list and then did that work. And um, you know, part of the discipline of writing the book also was is that I at a certain point I started writing it in real time. That is that when garlic was happening, I was writing the garlic chapter, and I tried to do it within that period of time, and then do a memoir chapter. It wasn't necessarily what came next in the book, but the memoir chapters were a little more challenging for me in certain ways because they were inward looking. They weren't about research, and they required a process of becoming honest with myself about what really happened. And some of the later chapters were painful for me about when things weren't working out so well. So I didn't always want to write them. And so the payoff then was, well, you get to do, you know, you get to have ice cream. You get to write an ingredient chapter. And so that was a wonderful discipline and structure of both working and was me. I was living the structure of the book. So that was kind of cool.
Sounds wonderful.
And Cassandra also says, Peter, working with you was an education, an honor, a challenge, and looking back, a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I
again.
know. I loved working with Cassandra too.
Okay, so Cathy, I think we have, why don't we take maybe two more questions? I'm going to read one out, and then we have one here from Anita saying this is beautiful, talking about food, like a lovely story experience. Do you think that as tech starts taking over, will there be space for these types of experiences for the average income person? Like, what would it mean for them to slow down and fully enjoy it? Or is this only an experience for the super wealthy?
Mm, well, first of all, I mean, I think that the pandemic slowed everybody down. I mean, and that may not be a direct answer to your question, Anita, but um, I think everybody saw that what's really important, we started to reorganize and reprioritize in our lives what was really important. Some of what all we had to do, the challenge of the day or the weeks during the pandemic was about feeding ourselves, and we also got, as some of the news was rolling out, we started to also see where the fragility of the food system and the food supply was, and who was at risk, and how did we feel about that? Do we want to participate in that? So I think that was a very, I think a lot of our lives are going to be recalibrating. We're not just going back to where we were a year and a half ago. A lot of things are going to change. I think that whatever it is, I mean, the slowness of what the life was that we were living when we couldn't go out on the street and go to the movie theater and go hear live music and all of that, or sit in restaurants. I think a lot of people took, realized that there was deep pleasure in those quieter moments, in that expanded time wasn't a bad thing. Um, so whether that's about food or choosing to read more books or choosing to stay at home and not trying to get on airplanes and go to all the foreign countries, but to visit our own backyard and get to know the people who were there. I don't think those are necessarily class-based decisions. I mean, obviously all of us need to continue to figure out how to make a living and earn the wages that we need to. But I don't think that living sensitively and prioritizing how we want to spend our leisure time, how we want to where we want to gaze our focus is necessarily a class-based decision. And I don't think tech is the answer. I guess that's the other thing. It's like, you know, tech looks like it's giving us more time. That's what they're trying to sell us. But in fact, cooking your own dinner, there's nothing like it, and nothing like sitting down with friends or your partner or yourself and enjoying what you ate rather than running around crazy making enough money so that you can pay somebody else to make it for you.
Mm-hmm. And then related, this may be our last question, and Cathy, we'll see if you have any kind of closing thoughts, but what about advice to chefs or restaurant owners in a post-COVID world?
Well, let's see. First of all, I think that we're in a place where again we can work at resetting and changing the model if we don't like what it was. There's a place where, because the businesses were so stressed, financially stressed, that there's a tendency to want to go back to some old habits of cutting costs and squeezing labor. But I don't think that's ultimately the right direction to be going in. I think we've learned that um, running a running a business based on the values that we have, maybe making less money, but um, taking care of our people, making sure that they're uh, well paid, having a good life, not too much on their plate. All those things are going to lead to a healthier business, healthier people, healthier business, healthier economy. Um, I don't think it's about the race to the bottom all the time. I think we have to figure out how to recalibrate that part.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, Cathy, do you have any additional last thoughts or anything you wanted to cover?
What what are you cooking tonight is one thing I wanted to ask actually from the beginning. What's
Well,
for dinner?
yeah, what's for dinner? Well, I'm not sure, but I'll tell you what I cooked for dinner last night.
Okay.
Um, First of all, I get an annual share in a community supported fishery of frozen sockeye salmon from Alaska.
Me
You
too, me
get it too,
too.
Cathy?
Iliamna, yep.
Yeah, Iliamna. Such amazing fish. Such amazing fish. So and in the market this week was the first shell peas, my experience of the first shell peas of the seasons. And so I did a little um, cauliflower and pea thing with maybe in an Indian way with shallots, ginger, and curry leaves, and then I made a green chile chutney with coconuts and green chilies and a lot of coriander and cumin seed, fresh coriander, cilantro, and so that was the relish that went um, with the salmon that I did lightly smoked on the barbecue. So really simple, really delicious, and that was dinner last night.
That sounds really good. And I hope you have a cookbook coming up.
Yeah, I know. That's right. You said you want the next book to be a cookbook, and maybe I will. I've always kind of felt that there were enough cookbooks in the world, but I like telling the stories, the botanical stories, and the if I can further inspire people about the glory of the universe and the miracle of the plants and animals that are here for us to um, take as our life and nutrition, then great, I'll share more recipes.
I love that. You're right.
Yeah,
Well taken.
Yeah, thank you, Cathy. It's been wonderful
So much, Peter.
talking with you, and I'm so glad that you really got deep into the book and appreciated what it was. And
So much to savor in it, really, a year's worth of reading. And Holly says, never enough cookbooks. Alexander says, never enough cookbooks. But you know, I think that there's recipes in here too. So you're really good at straddling genres in writing. So many more, hopefully.
okay.
Well, I know we have gone a bit over here since we started late. So for those of you who stayed, thank you so much. And to everyone who was able to join tonight, this was just such a treat. Peter, again, congratulations from all of us. And Cathy, thank you for leading us through this discussion. It's just it was a pleasure to just hear you just have this almost like dinner conversation together where we were all kind of dinner guests at the same dinner party. So really just so happy we were able to do this, and thank you for your time. So
Yeah. Well,
thank you
maybe
for
we will
support of
do
Slow
this dinner
Food
party.
NYC, and we look forward to reading more. I mean, that's the sad we have to end tonight, but the good news is we have your book to look forward to starting tomorrow.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Melanie. And I hope everybody who was here tonight, thanks for being here, and that you'll enjoy the book. There's lots of treasures and nuggets there. So have fun.
Absolutely. Yes. We look forward to it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Good night.
Cathy. Bye, Melanie. Bye, everybody.
Bye.